after posting all these AI music generator videos and all these videos about AI music and everything, I've gotten a lot of interesting comments and questions from you. So rather than respond to each one via text on YouTube, let's look at all of them. I'm going to answer them in this video. So I have my comments loaded up right now. These are from all my videos, but we're going to focus mainly on the AI videos. Right here, when it comes to should artists tell you if they're using AI music generators, this person says, give credit where credit is due. And I do kind of agree. I think that to some extent, maybe artists should start having to say that they did use Suno or Udio. It is kind of tough to say though, because I'll be honest, and this is where it gets, very ambiguous. Like I've talked about in a lot of different videos, like the ship thesis and whatnot, where if let's say I use only splice loops, so I didn't even create anything, and I release a song, in that case, do I have to admit, so to speak, that I use splice samples? Or if I'm DJing and I'm using the sync button, if you look at it kind of similar to AI, it's a program that does stuff for me. Do I have to admit to using the sync button? It is tough, but I do kind of agree that if I type in a prompt and it creates an entire song, I think it should be flagged that it is AI. Personally, I think that, right? Tough to say though exactly, right? Let's see, going down here. All right, with AI music generators, let's see right here. The problem with this argument is that if you're not trying to create songs to sell yourself, you can still leverage the technology to create information that will expose the audience to the music. Your audience is not going to be interested in trying to figure out if it's real or AI generated. They're just going to buy the song because they like it. And I agree with that, actually. I think for a lot of people, I talked about this in a Deezer article, that I think for a lot of people, 95% of listeners, they're like, hey, I don't care if it's a human or AI. If it's a banger, it's a banger. And so I agree with that. Like, I don't think a lot of people who listen to Spotify and just do like the Spotify radio for EDM, pop, hip hop, rap, rock, whatever, are trying to figure out if it's AI or human. They're like, if it's good, it's good. And I think one thing about that too, which is interesting, is I feel like the general public, to be honest, like us, as I'm making this video, we know a lot about AI stuff. I've done a lot of videos. But if you think about it, the general public probably doesn't understand, one, how good AI music generators are, and I think more so too, how they're everywhere. Like, and I mean everywhere now. I think Deezer determined there's roughly about 20,000 new songs uploaded every day that are made by AI. I actually think that's a lot higher, but keep that in mind, right? Going down here. All right, so talking about Deezer's new updates. Deezer's acting incorrectly here. As long as it cannot be reliably determined whether music is AI generated or not, one should refrain from falsely labeling individual tracks and artists as AI generated. Somehow the presumption of innocence should still apply. I kind of agree. I half agree, I half don't. I'd say this, and here's what's tricky about this. For the most part, I'm going to say this, I do agree, where the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I like that quote. And in this situation, I think Deezer is trying to do a good thing, where one, if a track, in case you know, is on Deezer, and they think, and that's a big thing with this comment, they think it's made by AI, Deezer will flag the song, let users know it's AI generated. You can still make money from it if you've released that song, but Deezer's not going to recommend that song in this algorithmic playlists. They are right, though, where I guarantee, this is just the way things work, there are going to be a lot of false positives. Let's say you release a song, and for whatever reason, you made it, it's made by a human, but it sounds AI-ish. Maybe that's the best way to word it. Like the vocals are funky. Let's say you used Alter Ego, which is a free VST plugin I reviewed on the channel. Alter Ego makes crazy good vocals, but they do sound a bit synthy. And maybe the algorithm thinks that because it's a synthy-ish vocal, which happens, like, say, a lot in EDM, maybe it thinks it's AI and it flags it and it's a false positive. That's not what you want. So I do see where they're coming from, in the sense that, like, I do think that unless you could say 100%, like, say, using the musical fingerprint, like I talked about that Suno's using, whatnot, I do kind of agree with them, but also I think there needs to be some step in the right direction. And I think in this case, it's not perfect, and again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. This is happening a lot with Spotify. Spotify is trying to crack down on people using bots to artificially get streams to make money. And sometimes random artists or songs get flagged. It happened to me, where someone featured one of my songs in a big playlist. I got a bunch of views almost out of nowhere, pretty much. And Spotify thought I was trying to game their system. I'm like, nope, it got featured in a playlist. Luckily, nothing happened to me, but it very easily could have, right? So again, very, very tricky. This is one of those things where I think Deezer's at least making the right moves, but I see where they're coming from where, you can't say 100% if it's actually AI, right? Now, again, who knows, maybe in the future, DistroKid will have a feature that says, hey, check this box if the song is AI generated, and you kind of have to do it on the honor system, like what's stopping you from just not checking it. But that's something that could be a possibility in the future, Going more down here. Going down here, AI music is amazing, but the mix is far inferior. Let's see. So yeah, just don't become too dependent on it. Here's the thing. The mix is far inferior. I do agree that I have made some AI songs that I mixed and mastered myself, or I downloaded the stems and did some stuff with it. But the truth is, I'm going to be honest, AI music's sounding a lot better, right? I get it, like, don't become too dependent on it. I do agree with that. I think that's a good line when it comes to AI music and AI music generators. And I do kind of look at it in a very comparable way to Splice. Like, for me, if I'm making a song, what I love about Splice is it allows me to have samples that I could not really maybe get on my own. So in the sense that, let's say I'm making a song, and I'm like, oh, you could have a cool melody from the ocarina. I've not seen any ocarina plugins. There might be some, but let's say I want like something similar to like Zelda. I could find an ocarina melody. Or a big thing for me, I make a lot of Brazilian music, and I use the berimbau from Capoeira in a lot of my songs. So I can go to Splice and use it, right? But I'm not heavily dependent on Splice to be like, shoot, I can't make a synth. Shoot, I don't know, how do I make a drum loop? I use Splice's tools in other ways because I'm doing other stuff. However, I think there are some people who use Splice because they can't do sound design. They can't just make a simple drum melody, right? Very comparable, again, to the sync button that I know how to beat match by ear. If, let's say, I go up to CDJs, let's say I start mixing, and the sync buttons, for whatever reason, are broken, no issue. But I use a sync button when I DJ because it allows me to do things quicker, allows me to make more interesting sets. And I do think this is a big thing. Don't become too dependent on it, where, again, I think DJing is probably a better example in an interesting way where if you can't beat match by ear and you have to rely on a sync button, that's a bad sign. At least learn how to beat match and then use the sync button to improve your stuff. Same thing with Splice. There's sometimes where I go to Splice, I might download something, not because I have to, because I can't make it on my own, but it allows me to just, grab something real quick, like the Bernabelle sample. I could probably hire some guy on Fiverr, or maybe probably go to Capoeira place around here and record it, but like it just speeds things up in a more efficient way, but I don't have to necessarily depend on it the way some people do for Splice sounds. I agree, something with AI music. Let's see, going on here. I really don't know why they discriminate AI music. Music is a product and musicians are businessmen. Why does it matter what is used to create the product? I actually kind of see where they're coming from. At the end of the day, music's music. Why does it matter to what is used to create the product? That is a really interesting ends justify the means type mentality that I know a lot of people have. I know a lot of people who are like, hey, like, who cares? Again, coming back to that same quote I've said in so many videos, if it's a banger, it's a banger. Who cares how and why it comes from? And it does remind me of this quote I love, one of my favorite quotes from Mark Cuban, who said, it's not about the glass being half full or half empty, as long as you're the one pouring the water. In the sense that if you look at it from Spotify's perspective, they might say, we don't care if a song is made by a human or by AI. Because in the end of the day, people are spending money to use our platform. People are listening on our platform. And whether they're listening to an AI song or a human song, we're the ones making the money from them listening. Why do we care? And so I do kind of agree. I think a lot of people, maybe some listeners, not even talking about it in a business sense, but I think a lot of listeners could have the same thing, same perspective. Some users say that Instagram and YouTube start to block AI music from monetizing. Is that true? I don't know. I'll have to do some research into that. To be honest, that I don't know. Again, this comes down to the Deezer question. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if most platforms now are looking into it. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify. Deezer really is the only one that has fully spoken up about AI music. YouTube has talked about AI generated content. Like, let's say you're trying to deep fake somebody. There is a setting now on YouTube Studio. You can say hey, this video contains a deep fake that is AI generated. That's not the real person, but it seems like it is. So YouTube has started to get into AI generated stuff, and I might even call it AI slop. Like John Oliver just did a really good piece about AI slop, which basically means a lot of people now on like Instagram, for example, are creating Instagram reels that are crazily weird AI generated stuff, and you can create thousands of reels a day if you want to, or whatever it is. I mean, Instagram will probably block you if you're trying to do that, but basically a lot of people are using AI to create AI generated art, like videos, music, photos, etc., and just blast it out into the world just to make a ton of money. Because if you think about it, if let's say you're trying to make YouTube shorts on YouTube, for example, and you can do 20 a day with an AI generated software, people are going to do that. Let's see. Going on here, most people grow attached to their artist anyway. That's what makes a song worth listening to and resonate with the fans. Even if AI can make such a good song, they lack the emotional connection, life story, and journey of an artist. That's why they can't surpass a song made by a human. Half agree, half disagree. I think that AI-generated songs can have a very, very good feel to them, right? I'll be honest, there's sometimes where I listen to my own AI-generated music over human-made music. So I do think there is something to be said about that, one. Two, I think it depends upon the person. I think that some people, again, if I listen to a good song, and let's say I save it on Spotify, I might not care if it's a human or AI. I might not even know. And I think for a lot of people, most people, they might not even think to be like, wait, is this a human? Let me investigate. Is this AI? Let me investigate. That being said, I do agree that I think one thing that starts to happen, if let's say you start to love an artist, like let's say you hear about Joe Schmo on Spotify, you listen to like 5 of their songs, like, man, this Joe Schmo guy or girl or group or whatever, they're pretty good. Let me find their Instagram. Are they touring? That's when I think you start to develop a connection. And in that case, I definitely agree, right? When it comes to AI music, that it's just AI. Like, for example, with me, my AI artist is the Infinite Lamb Shop. If you do research, I don't have an Instagram for the Infinite Lamb Shop. I have no social media for the Infinite Lamb Shop. I just do it for fun. I don't take it that seriously. Some more just release tracks here and there just to kind of test stuff out for these kind of videos. So if you were to investigate it, you might be like, oh, there's nothing about this Infinite Lamb Shop individual. Okay. And maybe you won't feel as deep a connection as like you follow their Instagram. You see photos of their family. You see reels of them making music. You do develop a connection, right? And there's a big reason why for a lot of artists, if you look at most artists, doing social media stuff that's a blend of almost both personal and professional, if I will like that, builds a connection. John Summit is the king of social media, I find, for a lot of DJs. There's a reason why he blew up from that, right? Not just being a good DJ, but also like he does a lot of really interesting things with social media. Dylan Francis. I know people who don't really care for Dylan Francis's music, but his comedy skits and his reels and his funny stuff he posts on Instagram and TikTok are hilarious, right? So I do agree with that extent, but yeah, I mean, that's a big one when you talk about like fans and developing a fan base. I'm gonna even say too, on this note with touring, like, if like say I want to go see someone perform out live, but it turns out it's just an AI artist, I'm never really going to see them live. One caveat to this, though, that I have talked about in recent videos, is there are some artists, though, that use AI music generators, release the songs, and pretend like it's theirs. Now, granted, you could argue, what is the difference between someone using an AI music generator, releasing it, saying, oh, this is my song, and someone hiring a ghost producer, which happens all the time in the EDM world, especially. What is the difference? Tough to say exactly, right? They're kind of the same thing. Someone else made something for you, you're pretending like it's yours. I said this before in some videos. I personally know people who do this whole thing where they release a new song and they're like, oh man, I spent a while in Ableton. I've been trying to study music production. I've been getting a lot better in Ableton. This is my song, and I spent a long time making it in Ableton. Blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, I know you literally made this in Suno. Like, I personally know that because I know you. This whole story you're giving about Ableton and you writing these lyrics because of X, Y, and Z, and you trying to create a cool melody that has this feel, all BS. That's when I'm like, okay. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. Oh, this is the same comment. It got like duplicated. Okay. Man, this is a lot. Wow, this is a really long comment. Let me see if I can like skim it real quick. Unless you input lyrics, music, and the voice of your own, they should tell people it's using by AI generator. So there are some legal stuff going on, but again, this person is basically saying, yeah, you probably should say, it seems like that you should say it's AI generated. Again, tough to say. I think that people should. Like, put it this way. If DistroKid announced tomorrow or today, you now can click a box that says this album, the single, this EP, this release basically was made primarily or basically was made 100% almost with an AI music generator. I would check it. Under the infinite lamp shop, I would check it. I'd want to be honest with people. Do people care? I don't know, but I at least want to be honest. Some people might though. Some people might not. Like my friend who I know probably wouldn't because they don't want people to know the truth. Tough to say. All right, let's see. Upload to YouTube first. I think it's about never had a problem with Suno Udio. This is talking about releasing AI music on DistroKid. Let's see, they're staying quiet because they don't want to shut down AI. And okay, that could be true too, that, some platforms might not want to shut down AI music because it might be growing more people to listen to it, right? Like, if you think of Spotify, for example, who hasn't really said anything, but Spotify arguably is the biggest streaming platform right now, there are a sugar honey iced tea load of people listening to a sugar honey iced tea load, if you catch my drift, a boatload of AI music, and it's keeping them on the platform. It's keeping them listening. So they might not care in a sense, because they're getting money. Like I said from Mark Cuban, it doesn't matter if the glass is half full or half empty, as long as they're the one pouring the water. To use that same analogy more directly here, it doesn't matter if it's human or AI, as long as you're the one that people are going to listen to that song, because you're making money from it. Spotify's like, hey, we're making money from a Spotify Premium. We're making money putting ads. If you listen to Spotify for free, we don't care if it's human or AI, as long as that song is keeping people on Spotify, keeping them listening, why would we care? Let's see. 100% AI songs should be banned on streaming platforms or put in a specific section. 100% human songs should be kept separate from AI, and AI songs with original lyrics or melodies should be differentiated with 100% AI songs. That way streaming will be more organized. In a perfect world, I actually do agree. I think in a perfect world where, as I said here, very, very specific wording, 100% AI. Because it's tough. There are people who've commented on this channel saying, hey, Mark, well, I write my own lyrics and then have Suno make the song for me. Does that count as AI generated? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. But again, this is where it's the ship of thesis, where there's a spectrum. Because if I use splice as a good example, there's some times where I make an entire song, I use one splice loop. Okay. But there's other times, I'll be honest, where I make a song where 99.9% of it is actually all different splice loops that I've organized, mixed, and chopped up and done stuff with, and a little bit of my own. Can I say that I made everything in that song? No, because most of it was loops. Granted, I think it is taking different puzzle pieces, organizing it in the right way. This is why sampling artists are geniuses. Daft Punk, I think, is a good example of this, of whatnot. But, it is tough to say about the spectrum of it. When it comes to AI music, to go back to this, I released one song called Box or Dog Dance under my human artist called Facero. I downloaded the stems from Suno. I mixed it, I chopped some stuff up. I did a lot of stuff with the stems to make it fit better because the mixing on it was horrible. Mixed it, mastered it, did a bunch of stuff, and released it. If someone came to me and said, is this AI generated? I'd probably say yeah. I'd say, well, technically I'd say 90% of it is AI generated, but in this case, if 10% of it was human, 90% was AI generated, does that mean this should go in AI category or human category? And then also, what percentage counts? Like, does that mean if it's more than 50% AI generated, it should be considered AI generated? I think this where it gets tough. In this specific wording, though, of this comment, if it's actually 100% AI generated, meaning you typed in a prompt in Suno, like, make me an electronic song. That's it. That's all you did. You typed in, 4 or 5 words or whatever it is. That's all you did. And then you go to release it. I think it should be put in a specific category that's AI generated. I do agree, but then again, you talk about a lot of false positives. Should there be a section just for AI and almost segregate it, if I'd use that word, with AI versus human? I don't know. Because in a perfect world, I do agree that it would just be AI and it would just be human, but people are going to lie. People are not going to admit it. People might say, hey, well, technically I thought of the prompt. I thought, make me an electronic song about the unique vibe of walking down the street at midnight when there's no one else around. Some people might say, hey, that prompt's kind of a cool concept. And because I thought of the concept, didn't I, in some way, contribute to the song? Therefore, it's not 100% AI generated. I don't know, right? Again, things are very vague here. As you're seeing throughout this video, as I'm answering some of these comments, like, it is kind of tricky. Okay, let's see. Talking about my AI music income, maybe I didn't dig deep enough, but it seems like a lot of your songs are novelty niche songs. Could that be a factor in your low sales? Yes. I'll say this. There's a lot of different strategies, and I will be talking about this actually this week, ironically. There's a lot of different strategies to making money when it comes to music. And a lot, to say that simply. Most of my songs I did on the Infinite Lamb Shop were kind of jokes, kind of memey stuff. And the main reason why is two things. One, it's just kind of easier, I find. But two, is it allows you to start getting traction on platforms like TikTok. So, for example, ESPN used one of my songs in one of their videos. It was the Infinite Lamb Shop, but they used one of my songs. The reason why is I did a lot of SEO for a lot of my songs. So I made songs about like different basketball players. I think the one that ESPN used was LeBron James by the Infinite Lamb Shop. I made a bunch of, I made one album, which is all the areas of Los Angeles. West Hollywood, Santa Monica, Hermosa Beach, etc. Because if, let's say you go on TikTok, you do a quick TikTok about Manhattan Beach Pier, for example, you, and a lot of people do, go to the song section, you just type in Manhattan Beach, because you're like, I don't know what song to put on it. You use one of those songs. So it is true that a lot of my songs are novelty / niche in the sense that they're very SEO driven. The song titles are very square, and they're kind of engineered in such a way that you could probably find them if you're just searching for something, or you could probably find them if, let's say, you're trying to add a song to your TikTok video, and the content of your TikTok video is the type of thing that you search for. So, for example, I did one song, I think it was up to my first album, which is all fast food chains, called McDonald's. And it's funny, actually, take a step back. On that same album, one was called Carl's Jr., right, about the fast food chain. And what's funny is within 24 hours of me releasing my first ever album under the Infinite Lamb Shop, AI artists, all that kind of stuff, someone used my Carl's Jr. song in their Instagram reel, because they went to Carl's Jr., did an Instagram reel of them eating like a cheeseburger or whatever, use that song. Because they just searched Carl's Jr. under the songs. So it is true. Now, is that the factor in the low sales? That could be it. Like, I mean, I'll be talking about this, I'll spoil the surprise. I think I'm going to do this video tomorrow, at least at the time of this video. I've now just crossed over the threshold of making over $200 with my AI music. $200. That's not that much at all. Like, that's not that much at all. And it's tough to break through as an artist, so I will say that. I think the niche and novelty aspect of the Infinite Lamb Shop, I think actually helps it more than hurts it. Now, granted, could I have maybe made a country artist with all the same theme and maybe done things that had better like rings, like my pickup truck or something? I don't know, like typical country stuff. Maybe, but I still think that the novelty niche actually does help me out. Granted, like I said, it just shows it is hard to make money when it comes to streams and downloads and whatnot. Again, here, this is something, okay, this is a good example. Define right. I feel like you write lyrics. You compose music. I write lyrics now for 50 years. When I found Suno, I took my lyrics and used AI for the music, right? And here's what's interesting. I have musicians and share my songs with them. Some get upset, but these are the same musicians that didn't want to use my lyrics. And so I kind of get that perspective. You wrote the lyrics, but you're using Suno to make the song for you. If you look at a lot of big artists, take Justin Bieber, he has someone who writes the lyrics for him. He has then someone who produces the song. He has then somebody who engineers a song in terms of, let's say, mixing, mastering, and whatnot. And then he has himself who sings the lyrics that someone else wrote for him. Did he make that song? Right? I mean, again, this is where things get really, really vague. And this is why when you look at AI music, I think the problem that a lot of people have, especially involving lyrics and creating and composition, is I think it's how easy it is. It's the same thing, I think, and a good analogy, I've talked about DJing a lot, as using a pre-recorded set. Like, if I hit a button on my CDJs, and I have one wave file that's an hour long, and I hit that button, and I make everything up on the fly, did I really DJ for an hour? I'd say no. Because technically you hit one button, everything's already pre-made, you literally did nothing to contribute to that set. Maybe like one little filter thing, one little like, get your hands up, like, but you're not really doing anything. You're fake DJing. And I think that's something with AI music that a lot of musicians are getting a little frustrated with, is saying, look, Splice, yeah, you're using samples, but you still have to make it, you still have to mix it, you still have to like use Ableton, you still have to understand a DAW in order to make a song using splice samples. With AI music generators, you can literally know nothing and make music. And so I think for a lot of musicians, it becomes this question of, is it the ease of it? Is it because it's so easy to use AI music generators that make it more cheating as opposed to using other platforms, other services, right? Again, right here, typing prompts and not doing anything has nothing to do with creativity. Some people would argue for that. Some people would argue against it, right? Going to here, does fingerprinting affect the listeners or creators physically? That I don't know. I'm going to be honest. Or putting music through Ditto or on other platforms have any physical effects or rumors? Oh, please don't touch me or something. I don't know at all in terms of physical effects. I'm not sure. But one thing I'll say on this, I don't know if they're making a joke or not, but when it comes to fingerprinting, could it be possible that DistroKid or Ditto or CD Baby or TuneCore would use the technology that Suno has or Udio has to detect it, and then that changes the way it gets released? That is very plausible. I would not be surprised if Suno did some kind of partnership with DistroKid or Spotify, depending on how they want to go down that release chain. Do they want to do it right when it gets released on DistroKid? Would they rather fingerprint it via Spotify and go down that route? I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. On the other end, maybe Suno would say, hey, we don't care. We just make the music. However it gets released, or whatever happens to it on Spotify, that doesn't involve us, right? AI needs tracking. Already kind of talked about this, but yeah, it's kind of tough to say automatically because AI users are lazy, untalented hacks who won't do it and will lie. Some cases, yes, some cases, no. There are some people who use AI in very interesting ways. Like I've created lyrics with AI generators that I then took as a sample, as if I just downloaded it on Splice and put it in some of my songs. So in some ways, I think some people use AI as more of a tool. They still do all the production stuff themselves. They still do everything, but they use it as a unique tool to create things maybe they couldn't create on their own or whatever, right? On the other end, you're definitely correct that that a lot of AI users are lazy and they don't understand anything about music, and they just release it. Again, tough to say. Where I think for a lot of musicians, it comes down to the fact of how easy or how hard is it. You still have to have some expertise to use a splice sample. You don't need any expertise to use an AI music generator. Let's see. All right, that doesn't really, I'm kind of scanning through. I agree with this. Okay, at the end of the day, the general public doesn't care how it's made if they like it, and that person created it is just as much a producer in the old days as requires more work to come up with something that might sell because AI is not as good as of a mind reader as real life studio musicians and singers. That's an interesting perspective. Like there have been times where under the Infinite Lamp Shop, for example, I made a bunch of prompts, listened to a bunch, picked the one that I thought sounded the best, brought it into Ableton, and then mastered it or remastered it. Or I cut off the end of it because I didn't like the way the end worked. You can even now do this within the Suno platform under their editing feature. You could argue that that has some potential truth because it's like, I still have to pick the one that I thought musically sounded the best. If Suno made me 5 songs, let's say 6, because it does 2 iterations of every prompt, let's say 6, and I listened to one that, let's say the music theory was off, or something about it was just, it sounded really bad, of course I'd choose a different one. So it required me, when releasing songs under the Infinite Lamp Shop, to use my musical chops, if I had word like that, to pick the best song. But then you can also argue, you don't have to be a musician to do that. I mean, maybe you do. Like, again, it's tough. Going down more though, where the problem comes in is doing business with AI. A major label or investor might have an interest in promoting it, but the moment they found out it's AI, end of conversation, unless they think they can make money with it, with just the music, and you better be honest, or you might wind up dealing with lawyers not on your side. I think that's potentially true, that for some labels, most labels would not want to accept AI music and releasing it. So that's a big thing. If you're going to pretend like you actually made it, and let's say in a different alternate universe, or let's say something happens where the label says, hey, we love your song, we're going to release it, we want to do a remix package of it. Can you send us your Ableton project so we can break it up into stems in the way we want it to? That's going to be a tricky thing if you, let's say, you don't have the Ableton project because it's AI generated, right? Let's see, as a guy who's made his living in real studios, playing real instruments, I could see AI would be the standard, and it kind of already is the standard, music shortly, with only the most unique and sought after real artists going to the top. Yeah, and being mediocre will have no position in music anymore. I agree that I think AI will be something that starts to become a lot more normalized, for better for worse. Like there's tons of AI programs now that will instantly master your song. That used to not really be a thing, and AI is getting more and more brought into pretty much everything we do. Right? Every Facebook has AI now. Twitter has AI. What's it called? Grok? Is it whatever? There's just a lot of AI stuff in everything we do now, and I think in music it's gonna become more and more frequent. All right. Let's see. The answer is no for you don't soon paid subscriptions realistically. No one cares. I think this is the big thing. Like, basically, what it comes down to, in general, is that maybe artists don't have to tell if they're using AI or not. People don't care. People don't care. That I actually don't know. I'm gonna skip down a little more. I write all my own lyrics with bad arthritis, and I chunk out the song on a guitar or piano. Then use a variety of AI tools and DAWs to bring the song to life. So in this case, for example, I will create with whatever tools are available. You're still creating it, and I think that's a little different. I think there's a massive difference between using AI tools. You could argue, is autotune, for example, AI tools or not? You could argue that. And I think the difference is AI creating all of it for you, or are you using different elements more like a tool rather than a full-on creation thing? I think that's something that a lot of musicians probably feel similar to about, where like, look, you write on your own lyrics, you do stuff on the guitar and piano, then you use tools to bring the song to life, right? Sometimes you said you do hire a singer or a guitarist or pianist, but if you think about it, this person seems like they're doing more creation. They're producing, they're making the song, and they're just using AI as a good tool. See, to me, that's a little different, right? But again, this is where things get very vague. You'd see right here. If you wrote the notation of a song and MIDI computer plays it for you, you wrote the song. If you put in a few notes and the drum machine did the beat for you, you wrote the song. It's nobody's business. Why so hard for people to understand? I, in a sense, kind of agree, right? Like, if you create all this kind of stuff and you made it, why is it anybody's business? Again, this is where like the debate really starts getting more interesting. On this one, how is this any different than what the industry already does? Ghostwriters and the artist claiming they wrote it. Oh, it's kind of funny. No offense to this person. I don't think they watched the full video, because I did actually talk about this near the end of this video. I did actually mention that. But I know sometimes when people watch YouTube videos, you don't watch the full thing. But I did actually mention that when it comes to ghostwriters. And I agree. Like, in a sense, something external from you did all the work and came to you and gave you the thing. There's, in my mind, I'll be honest, I don't think there's really any difference between someone using an AI music generator, creating the song, and claiming it as theirs, and someone hiring a ghost producer, giving them $1,000, them making a song for them, and them claiming it as their song. Same thing to me. Same thing. So I will say that if you're someone who, like, say, uses ghost producers and ghostwriters that make an entire song for you and give it to you, there's no difference between that and an AI music generator. The only difference is, one, you're employing a human. You could argue about the ethical things when it comes to that. And two, maybe you're spending a little more money. It depends, because there are some people who hire people just to write them lyrics. There are some people who hire somebody just to do something else. But if you're hiring a ghost producer to do everything for you, they're giving you the song. They're signing an NDA, meaning they can't claim that they made the song themselves. They sign an NDA, and then you're saying, oh, this is my new song, blah, blah, blah. It's the same as using an AI music generator, so I agree. This person also says, no, you don't have to tell anyone anything ever. True. I don't really think, at least right now, there's any penalty to not telling anybody, right? Do a few more, because I know, like, again, these are kind of all over the place, but I think a big thing you're noticing right now is how a lot of people are, a lot of musicians are getting mad about the whole aspect of if you have to claim it or not, and the spectrum of how much you use it. I think that's the big thing, let's see right here. Exactly, and this is the big thing, which we call it. And one thing I will say about this, by the way, is this video I basically talked about Spotify potentially making their own AI generated music. They keep everything in-house. Very similar to, like, say, Waymo, the self-driving car. They don't have to pay human drivers because everything's in-house. This person said, I don't see that happening. They have over 100 million tracks. It's much easier to let people do the work, especially now that people are generating and uploading. They just have to sit and take money without being worried about a backlash. I do agree. Do I ever think that Spotify would make their own AI-generated music so that way they didn't have to pay out artists, whether they're AI or not? I would say probably not, but I wouldn't put it past them, but I'd say probably not. So I do agree with you here. Let's see. Let's see. You know what? This is an interesting one that I'll probably finish off this video with because this is a good point. You don't stop technology, you adapt or get left behind. Look at the sync button. A lot of vinyl DJs, when CDJs came out, even actually ignoring the sync button, when CDJs came out, vinyl DJs were like, this is not real DJing. And if, let's say, you were hardcore stuck on vinyl, you got left behind because you had to transition to CDJs. And then kind of controllers with like Tractor, for example. I remember people was like, oh, Tractor isn't real DJing. And it's like, controllers are very useful. Porter Robinson and Zed used a Tractor Control S4 until they switched to CDJs. So, again, you adapt or get left behind. Whoever handles copyright laws will have to sort this out. That is very true. Copywriting gets very tricky, but anyway. It's never been a better time to be a lyricist. I get to bring all my ideas to life and have a bit of control over style, genre, etc. as well. It has been so much fun. I don't think you should lie about AI and using AI, but it needs to be transparent as the big names who aren't making their own music as well. Art is personal, and people would be very upset that you are able to make something on their level without the 10,000 hours put in. I understand that this is the future, well, the start of it. And that is a really interesting point to kind of leave this video off on. That's been a very reoccurring theme through a lot of these comments. And obviously, might as well say this. On this channel, most of these comments are from musicians. So it makes sense that you could see a lot of musicians being like, no, AI is horrible, or some people saying no, AI is great. And you have this huge spectrum of perspectives. But I do agree with this person. They said, look, AI music generators allow you to do something in seconds without having to put in that 10,000 hours in that another person, let's say, would have to put in. And that is what happened to one of my friends. I know people, like I said in a lot of videos, who said, Mark, I am going to spend probably more, but I'm going to spend maybe 5 years trying to learn Ableton. And even after 5 years of putting in my 10,000 hours in that DAW, of learning Ableton, I still probably won't make something as good as Suno. And they're potentially not wrong. You could argue if, someone could learn Ableton faster or shorter than 5 years. I think you'd probably learn Ableton shorter than that if you had like a private teacher and whatnot. But anyway, it is that question. Like, why spend 10,000 hours to do this kind of crazy stuff in Ableton and finally get good at music production when you can do it in seconds with Suno? If I'm doing a complex math equation, why do it on paper where I can quickly do it on a calculator? Now, granted, there's two things that come into play with that perspective. Like, say, doing an equation on paper versus a calculator. One is a creativity, right? If I'm doing a math equation, that's a little different, right? But when it comes to music, there's a creative aspect. And people like to argue that humans have this essence, this creativity that AI can't replicate. Personally, I actually disagree. I think at the end of the day, music is a formula, and AI is very good at figuring out formulas, of course. And I think it can, I hate to say, replicate human creativity. I hate to say I think it can. Whether we love that or hate it, I think that's a harsh truth a lot of musicians don't want to admit. The second big one, which is one good theme as like a meta big picture perspective, is the love of just doing it. Like, let's say you're like, look, I love math. And yeah, I know if I'm doing this crazy like division or multiplication or some arithmetic on paper, I know I can use a calculator. And I know the calculator is going to be faster and, of course, more accurate. But I like doing math. I like doing math equations. And sometimes for me as a fun hobby, I like doing math equations on paper, seeing if I can get the right answer just with a classic piece of paper and a pencil or a pen. There's a love of it. And I see that perspective. If that's you love doing math equations, you don't care about a calculator, even though you know it's better. And likewise, when it comes to music, a lot of musicians are saying, hey, okay, this AI music stuff is going to get bigger. And like this person said, whether we like it or not, the technology is going to get faster and more efficient. It's only halfway through 2025. Think about last year, halfway through 2024, when I started doing some of these videos, how meh AI music was. It was kind of interesting, but it didn't seem as much of a threat. And only a year later, look where we are. and things are getting better. For example, it's like almost like a logarithmic curve, or like an exponential curve, I think, in the sense that every month, for example, in the first month, I'm making numbers up, it's 10% better. Then the next month, it's 12% better. Then the next month, it's 15% better. And so not only is AI getting better every month, but the rate that it's getting better is also increasing every month. That is a big thing that's going to be affecting all of us. All of us, not just with AI music, but everything. And they're right. This technology is not going to stop. The cat's out of the bag. And so people might have this perspective of utilize it or be left behind. Stick with vinyl and be left behind because now every club uses CDJs. Focus on beat matching by ear, which still a lot of DJs do, or focus on the sync button. These are the kind of things that people are just kind of, like say if you're somebody who only releases your music on cassettes, you would fail as a musician right now. Because oh, no. This DistroKid releasing music on Wine. No. People want the physical copy specifically of a cassette. If you were Trish trying to release your music on cassettes, you would never make it as a musician right now. Right? Let's be honest, you really, really wouldn't. Unless you already have a big following, like I think Snoop Dogg did release one of his albums in the past few years on cassettes. That's a little different. But if you're starting out as a musician and you're so gung-ho about old school stuff and you're like, I have to release it on cassettes, you'd fall behind. And is AI music the new thing that maybe in 20, 30 years, maybe in 30 years, musicians will look back right now and be like, man, why were they hating so much on AI music? It's great. I look at the same thing, very comparable, like I've said in a few videos, to self-driving cars. Right now, getting a Waymo, because you've never taken one, is a self-driving car. It's super trippy getting in it. I can see in 20, 30 years, I'd bet a lot of money that in 20 years, people are like, wow, isn't it crazy to look back in 2025 that people trusted human drivers? Like, why would you ever trust a human to drive when there's way more accidents, way prone to injury, you're X, Y, and Z? Now we only use self-driving cars. Right now, though, it seems too Black Mirror-ish, like the future being here type mentality. Could that be the case with AI music generators? And again, love them or hate them, whether you're for them or against them, whether you're on the perspective that there should be things being flagged when it comes to streaming services that it was AI generated, or you're like, hey, who cares if it's a banger, whatever side of this equation that you're on, or somewhere in the middle, however you perceive it, whatever your perspective is, there's one undeniable truth. AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. The cat's out of the bag, and it's only going to get better.